I must have been about 6 or 7 when I lived in Lebanon. The country was ravaged by war at the time, and murders were common and frequent. I remember during a particular vicious era when the bombings would rarely stop, I would stay home sitting in front of my television watching a very, very strange show. It was a show for kids. It lasted about 30 minutes and contained strange and sinister images. To this day, I believe it was a thinly veiled attempt by the part of the media to scare kids, like a scare tactic. I think it was to keep kids in place. Because the moral of every episode revolved around a very uptight, stereotypes. Such as stuff like bad kids stay up late, bad kids have their hands under the covers when they sleep, and bad kids steal food from the fridge at night. It was very weird, and it was Arabic on top of it, so I didn't understand much of it at all. But for the most part, the images were very graphic and comprehensive. The thing that struck me the most, however, was the closing scene. It remained much the same in every episode. The camera would zoom in on an old, rusted, closed door. As it got closer to the door, strange and sometimes agonizing screams would be more and more audible. It was extremely frightening, especially for a children's program. Then a text would appear on the screen in Arabic reading, "This is where the bad kids go." Eventually, both the image and the sound would fade out, and that would be the end of the episode. About 15 or 16 years later, I became a journalistic photographer. That show had been in my mind all my life, popping up in my thoughts sporadically. Eventually, I had enough. I decided to do some research. I finally managed to uncover the location of the studio where much of the channel's programs had been recorded. Upon further research and eventually traveling to the site, I found out it was now desolate and had been abandoned after the big war ended. I entered the building with my camera. It was burnt from the inside. Either a fire had broken out or someone wanted to incinerate all the wooden furniture. After a few hours of cautiously making my way into the studio and snapping pictures, I found an isolated, out-of-the-way room. After having to break through a few old locks, I managed to break the heavy door open. I remained frozen in the doorway for several long minutes. Traces of blood, feces, and tiny bone fragments lay scattered across the floor. It was a small room, and an extremely morbid scene. What truly frightened me, though, what made me turn away and never want to come back, was the bolted cage microphone hanging from the roof in the middle of the room. I turned around fast and ran out, but when I looked back at the door, it was closed and it read, "This is where the bad kids go." I immediately ran out and acted like I never even knew about it. I didn't want to call the cops. I wasn't supposed to be there. I called my mom and I asked her about the show. She told me that for 30 minutes every day I'd sit there and just look at the screen. Nothing was on it, just static. And then once it was over, I'd walk back to my room and all I'd say is, "I don't want to go where the bad kids go."